Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 418. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com. And we're excited to have back with us the internationally acclaimed and talented comic creator of Lugo Arts, Patrick Lugo. Patrick.
Happy New Year, Barney. Twice over now.
I know. See, look at that. And so you're here because we were just talking before we went on the air, just about, things that are happening in the new year. And you are here also to talk about and represent the Kids Comic Unite. I visit the group. I'm part of the group. I'm more of a lurker of the group, and not maybe as interactive as I should be. But I mean, you are right up there. You're so far up in the KCU group that you actually have your own picture in the About Us page. So that's something special right there.
It's been a remarkable journey, but I have to admit that Kids Comics Unite has been so pivotal in so much of the recent success that I've been privileged to participate in over the past handful of years. So it's been a wonder, and it's been a privilege to be able to benefit from them and then turn around and try and help this community grow and achieve new levels of accomplishment.
Right.
So that's one of the things I'm here to talk to you about, is our latest crazy collective endeavor.
Yeah, so talk to us. So it is, you guys are now making, and you guys are doing your own anthology, and you are no stranger to anthologies as well, Patrick.
This is true. One of my first big breaks, we can call it, was appearing in an anthology titled Speculative Fiction for Dreamers. Mm-hmm. That was in 2021. I'll be in a second, almost a thematic sequel to that anthology, which I will have a comic in this year. And that one's called From Cocinas to Lucha Libre Ringsides, right? So it's a Latina comics anthology focused on Latin food and Latin sports. And so I have a short comic in there about the antics around church picnics and things like that. But that'll be coming out later on this year. And that's a different project than the project that I'm here to talk to you about, because Kids Comics Unite is doing it very differently.
Exactly. And I want to remind our viewers and listeners out there that if you are someone that is into kids comics, if you're into someone that's into, young adult graphic novels, any of that stuff, this is definitely the go-to group to be a member of. And it's called Kids Comic Unite. It is kidscomic.unite.com. You can't miss it. And you're here to tell us a little bit about the anthology that you are all presently going to be working on.
Yes, we have been working on it for just about a year now, right? It's called Let's Go, a Kids Comics Studio Anthology. So the key details, right? Kids Comics Unite is a free online community focused on comics for kids. It's awesome. Comics are for kids again. But then within that community, there's a premium community, a subscriber-based community called Kids Comics Studio. And that's for people who are willing to really invest in their careers as graphic novelists. We have weekly meetings, we have seminars with professionals, we bring editors in to kind of go over people's projects, right? It's really designed to give people practical tools on a weekly basis to help move them forward in their career. And so I benefited from that program when it was an intensive, a strict 6-week course. And since then, I've helped evolve the community so that they can have, the free aspect and then the subscriber aspect, which is the studio. And then one of the things that we've decided we were inspired to do, and this came up last year, was to learn by doing, right? Publishing has been changing so drastically, for the past handful of years, and comics publishing in particular. And so we kind of realized that we should put into action some of the feedback that we've gotten. Like one of the things that I've learned is that getting yourself into an anthology is a great way to kind of get your career momentum started. You know, it's a low bar. It's usually a small contribution. You know, you're not creating a 200-page masterpiece. You're doing a 5-page comic that's going to sit alongside a bunch of other 5-page comics or whatever. And so, like, doing an anthology is a great way for people who are still getting their publishing careers started. You know, it's a great way for them to take a step forward. And so we decided that we should do that for ourselves because we have such a diverse community with a huge range of experience, right? Like Jana Marshima, the founder, she was, part of Scholastic when they started their kids comics anthology imprint, which, kind of changed the industry. And so she's been someone who's like been great to work with and learn from because she has she's had both of her feet planted firmly in traditional publishing, and it's been a miracle to watch her take one foot and start moving it into the arena of self-publishing and independent publishing. And
Right.
so that's kind of like a coup for many of us who have always been more, indie creators, let's say.
So give us a little some details on this anthology.
These are mostly writer artists, but then there are a handful of people who are just writers who have found an artist to work with. And we're all, contributing, comics to this anthology. And when I say comics, some of these contributions are like a single page comic. Some of them are more in depth, up to 8 pages. And so we kind of created this system where we would, go through, we would divide up our chores into different groups and, figure out like what needs to get done. So we have about 30 some, over 30 contributors, right? We're going to put together this full color comic that's going to be like digest size, like a small nice package for young hands to be able to read. And then we plan to crowdfund it later this year. But what that's not what makes it interesting. What really makes it interesting was the way that we kind of created a system of like a system of collectively creating this project together, right? We divided
Mm.
ourselves up into a series of committees, and each committee was focused on a specific element of the publishing process, right? So that as we moved forward, we would have some people who have experience in that arena sitting alongside people who have no experience in that arena. And then together they could figure out such things as how many pages do we want this comic to be? What's the finished size? What are going to be some of the aspects that make it, a project? Like there's going to be a theme, right? And so there was a whole in-depth process where we peeled off a handful of people to focus on the editorial aspect of the project,
Mm.
right? And then one of the tasks that they undertook was deciding that this should be a themed anthology. So rather than just being a collection of short stories, anyone does what they want, the editorial group figured out a theme based on the interests that we all collectively had. And then we built that theme brief around what we want to do. So the title of the project is called Let's Go. And the theme has to do with taking a journey and what you encounter along the way. And so that's like that was became the really broad concept around which different people made their comics for the project.
Mm.
At the same time, me being an indie creator, I took on the marketing side of the endeavor. And so I've been working with a bunch of the other creators to kind of create this identity for the project. So such things as building a landing page, starting social media, creating that little mascot that you see on the screen right there. So we have our aunt, she's called Aunt Holly G. She's the mascot for our anthology. And, it's that kind of whimsical humor that we would not have discovered if we just decided we're going to publish an independent anthology, right? It's
Right,
the fact that we were building it, we were trying to build an identity for this project, that the creative process led to, let's create a mascot. And what if that mascot was an ant? And what if that ant's name was Holly? And then it just built up from there. And so as a result, we have this cute little character that we've been playing games with. We launched the Kids Comics Anthology social media account so that we can create little short comics using this character to kind of help let people know, we're a bunch of creative, you know, fun loving characters looking to create this project. And here, have an example. Meet our
right.
aunt.
And so Patrick, it is the crowdfunding campaign is going to be starting. I'm just going to take a guess. Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. I'm just guessing.
Bingo. That is exactly
Jeez.
when we're
Wow.
doing it. And let
Okay.
me tell you, we decided on that date sometime in June of last year, right? Like, so
Uh-huh.
if we had had this conversation around March or April of 2024, I might have been telling you to expect this comic anthology to come out over the summer,
Mm.
right? But not everyone amongst our 30 plus participants is comfortable with that level of building the jet plane as the jet plane taxis down the runway. And so after a few meetings and a lot of feedback, people wanted to consider such factors as the school year, right? Like
Mhm.
they wanted a lot of our creators are parents, so they wanted to be able to focus on this project and not let that project, slam into whatever obligations they may have as a school year ends. So that's like an example of some of the stuff that I learned, being a kind of a DIY creator, right? I
Right.
tend to just do it myself. And if I need to learn how to do it, I'll learn while I'm doing it, right? So fortunately, we had people who had a little bit more restraint. And so they've been working to kind of create this, more comprehensive schedule. And so we settled on the third Tuesday of April to launch a Kickstarter campaign to fund this book.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. Yeah, people in this group are not strangers to Kickstarter as well.
We have a handful of people who have crowdfunded their own projects before. We have a handful of participants who've been published legitimately. One of the contributors who I'm actually collaborating with, he's a writer who's written for Marvel Comics Doctor Strange.
Mhm.
So we have like a wide range of talent, huge range of talent, and we have a pretty broad range of experiences. And so part of the ethos for this project is to put that experience on display so that other people who are less familiar with crowdfunding can kind of learn by working alongside of us. And so the
Mhm.
same is true for such things as the marketing, right? Like, as you know, Barney, I'm fairly prolific as a newsletter writer. And so um, one of the things that I was focused on was launching a newsletter specifically for this project, because while we're learning how to create this campaign, we are also learning how to do all of these other aspects of publishing, like how to take good meeting notes, how to organize a timeline so that, things get completed in time for the next stage. And so like these things are like become valuable like learning assets that we've been sharing with each other, because while I might have certain skills, there are other members of our community who are much more skilled at some such things as like spreadsheets and timetables, right? So I would probably avoid trying to do it, or I would do it in a way that works for me. But then here's someone who knows how to do a proper timeline. And so they went ahead and did it. And then that's now benefiting me, right? So there's this whole community dynamic. And then the thing is now that we know how these timelines and spreadsheets can be built, we're trying to package up that information so that other comic creators can kind of go ahead and follow along and learn from our mistakes and learn from our successes to do their own crowdfunding or create their own collaborative comic project, you know or do a school visit or
Right.
learn how to bake cookies. We had this one crazy campaign that we did on social media where one of our writers is very accomplished at baking. Almost all of her work has some kind of baking component in her stories. And so, as a little game, once again, using our Anthology mascot, we posted some of her cookie recipes for like National Cookie Baking Day, and we did like a little comic of the ant baking cookies. It was both absurd and fun, but it was an example of the kind of creative surprises that surface, within this kind of publishing structure that you see here, right? It starts with like the overarching publishing committee that is making the big decisions. We're gonna
Right.
fund this campaign. We're gonna, spend X amount of money to get to publish X amount of pages. But then we've broken down other subcommittees. Editorial committee is going to be in charge of the theme and making sure, not just making sure that typos are not evident, but helping people learn what it means to work with an editor, right? Not everyone has had that experience. So this is their chance to learn that. Meanwhile, over in the design committee, we have people who have great experience with publishing, working with people who have no experience with publishing to figure out a printing budget, to determine the quality of the paper that we want to use, like all of those aspects. We then have a marketing committee, which I've been in charge of, and that's been the group that's just been trying to get the word out there, trying to keep track of all the details, because there's so many surprises that we encounter along the way that we think they'll be useful for the people who follow behind us, right? And then
Right.
as a result, we've kind of broken those tasks up into smaller subsections like the newsletter. Someone's got to sit there and find out what's going to be the subject of our newsletter for January. And I'll tell you, hasn't come out yet, so people can still subscribe. And that's going to be a deep dive into the process of how we decided our theme.
Right.
And
And so, and also too, as we mentioned, so that's coming out. So fast forward a bit for me, Patrick, and say there's a librarian that is watching this or listening to this 2 years from now, and they're like, wow, this sounded like this Let's Go anthology sounded amazing. Where am I going to find this book now?
well, they'll be able to just do an Amazon search, because we 110% plan to make the book available on Amazon as well as Ingram Spark and like some of the other print on demand formats. So we plan to make it broadly available. And if we succeed, I mean, this is my own personal ambition, but if we succeed, I'm hopeful that we can kind of make it a fairly regular process where part of the learning experience within Kids Comic Studio is, the extra work that's involved getting your book into the public. I think a lot of creators, and this is something that I was burdened with for many, many years, and it held me back a lot. But a lot of creators are enamored with the idea of just being the person that creates the art and then having somebody else go out there and try and get that book on the bookshelf, try and get it into people's hands. But I mean, that doesn't really map onto reality anymore. And so a lot of creators have to also be their own publicity team.
Right.
You know, some people are better at it than others. And so we want this project to kind of show like that it's not just about delivering that 8-page comic. It's also about showing up to do the extra things that result in a character mascot, that result in these little extra social media perks, that result in these newsletter updates, right? Like that's a thing that I think a lot of creators overlook.
Right.
And so if we can establish that as like, this is part of what it takes, then I think not only will we benefit, but like the community at large will benefit in terms of having a better idea of what's and why books take so long to produce.
Right. And as we mentioned, it's like I also just want to reiterate to our listeners and viewers is like, if you are anybody who is an illustrator or into kids comics or kids literature, this is definitely a group that you need to be a part of. It's called Kids Comic Unite, and in April 22nd, 2025 is going to be the launch of their first anthology series. It's going to be a little over 200 pages, right, Patrick?
We're shooting for approximately 200 pages. You know, it's going to be a nice, thick, perfect bound book, full
Yeah.
color. I've looked at the submissions and it's really inspiring to see the quality of art that people are delivering
Right.
to it. And this is still at the early stages. People are still working on finishing the artwork. But once again, that was like one of the processes that we had to invent for this project, where we kind of set up a timetable that said, submit your rough pencils with one finished page by this date. And then in January, we'll check in to see some more pages. And then I think in February, we'll check in again, right? Because not everyone has the experience of like delivering a project within a specific deadline. So we're kind of
Right.
structuring our process to be able to help those people succeed, but then also so that we can kind of share with the greater community what we've learned, what we're making, and what it looks like. You know,
In the next couple months, we'll be having some of the creators of the anthology. It's going to be on the podcast as well.
yeah, that's one of the things that I've been really excited about personally, because you know, all of these different levels of experiences, all of these different approaches to creativity, right? I've been like able to just take all of these because of the meetings that I've attended, and because I'm crazy enough to want to attend extra meetings. I've been able to have a peek at all of these different processes, and so I think there's just nothing's going to be better than just to see like the diversity of people and interest and techniques involved in the creation of this book. So like being able to send a handful of the creators that I'm most inspired by to you, so that you can kind of see this picture from all of these different angles, I think is just going to kind of help drive home the message that this is kind of a unique project in itself.
Thank you so much for sharing this information, and I look forward to following the KCU anthology as it progresses. So
Yeah, we've only it's I'm looking forward to have more people come on board, because we've only just started to kind of publicly make the announcements and put the word out there beyond just our immediate community. So, I invite people to subscribe. There's going to be a lot of useful information for people who want to create comics, but then there's also going to be lots of fun stuff, stuff that pages of artwork that you could print out and color with your kids on a rainy day, little activities that we plan to do. Like, we have such a wide range of creators with so many experiences that everyone's bringing something to the table. And so we just have a lot of fun surprises that I think readers of all ages will enjoy.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you, Barney. It's always a pleasure to hang out.